Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic, and that is training for longevity. Because really everyone wants good longevity, let's be honest, and it's something that everyone bangs on about. I don't think everyone does it that well though. So today we're going to talk about it, break down what it is and how you actually train for longevity. So before we get into it, what is longevity? And I think there's two ways to think about longevity. There is quite literally how long you live, so whether you die at 80 or you die at 100, and there is your physical capacity for the time you are alive. So you may die at 100, but maybe your independent physical capacity ends when you're 80. So you would have, say, 80 years of independent physical capacity in terms of longevity, and you'd have 20 years extra of your total life in terms of longevity. And these are two separate things, and in my opinion, we're trying to align them as well as we can when we train for longevity. So two really good examples of this would be is that in your lifetime, you are eventually going to become disabled and you're eventually going to become an involuntary celibate. That is just a reality. As you get older, these things are going to happen to your body. If you're lucky, that is going to happen right before you die. You maybe get really ill 3 days before your death, and then you're stuck in bed, you can't do things for yourself and you need support. And then obviously if you're stuck in bed, you can't do things for yourself and you need support, you're probably going to have a pretty hard time having some sort of sexual interaction. So, that is, if you're lucky, it's just going to happen right at the end of your life. These two things are going to be really aligned. If you're unlucky though, you may live quite a long portion of your life, either as an involuntary celibate or pretty significantly disabled to the point where you're not independent. And that can really happen because of your physical capacity. You may live longer, but your physical capacity has deteriorated. So a great example of this would be is if you have, such poor cardio, such poor strength, such poor mobility that actually having sex becomes intimidating and scary. You might still be able to do it, you'll find ways around it, but you're not going to be able to have liberal sex as you might have done when you were in your 30s. And that is going to have a significant knock-on effect to your quality of life. And I think this is just a really obvious example, but of course we can think about things of whether or not you're able to run around with your grandkids, whether or not you're able to get yourself up and down off the toilet. And we can think about basically physical capacity as the things that allow us to stay independent and allow us to live a normal human life over the time period that we're alive. Now, we can train for both extending our period of life and extending our physical capacities for as long as possible. And as I say, we're trying to align these two to ideally go at the same time, or roughly the same time. In reality, you're probably going to get maybe 10% more life than you will complete physical capacity, but that's by the by. Because the way we train to improve both is actually very similar. If we want to improve our time we are alive, our just general existence longevity, then we need to be looking to improve our health as much as possible to avoid medical catastrophe that kills us. So we need to do cardio to support our cardiovascular system and avoid cardiovascular disease. Obviously, that is one of the #1 killers in the modern world. We want to make sure we're doing strength training so we avoid muscle wastage as we get older. Muscle wastage is one of these things that leads to people getting weaker, leads to falls, leads to injuries, or, just getting stuck on the toilet. And that's where we start to see this does link into our physical capacity. We also want to make sure we're training a little bit of impact so that we maintain bone density as we get older. Something for women in particular is that post-menopause, there is a pretty significant drop in bone density. So if you're not training to counteract that, or you haven't been training to improve your bone density to a significant number, a significant amount of density before your menopause, well then afterwards you might come into trouble. Maybe you have a bad bone break, it pierces the skin, infection, you die. So these things do link up. But then when we think about physical capacity, well, we need to do a pretty similar thing. When I get to my 70s, do I want to be able to, run around with my grandkids or at least go on a walk with them? Well, then I'm going to need to train my cardio. If I want to stay independent for as long as possible, I want to be able to, comfortably have sex, I want to be able to get up and down off the toilet, well then I'm going to need to be strong enough that I can maneuver my body weight pretty easily, that I can squat up and down and stay capable. We can even think of more mundane things. My grandma loves gardening. So as she's getting older, one of the things that she wants to do is stay gardening. And obviously there's going to have to be an element of strength there. And doing some strength training will allow you to maintain that ability to garden longer. So when we think about training both for the time we are alive and the sense of longevity for literally how long we live, and then the longevity of our physical capacity, we actually are thinking about training our athletic qualities. And they're going to be the same athletic qualities. Training for health and training for function are very much the same thing. And this is kind of the key with longevity training that we need to understand that gets missed. It's often implied that it's about mobility, about feeling really relaxed and blah, blah, blah. And it's not. It's actually about training to develop your athletic qualities. And as we've spoken about time and time again on this channel, if you're thinking about developing athletic qualities that prepare you for life, then we need to be thinking about developing all of our athletic qualities because that's why we have them. All of them become useful in day-to-day life. Mobility, power, strength, it's all a thing. So when we're designing a plan, we want to think, okay, let's try and be a generalist athlete or, do a GPP program. And if we do that, we are going to be training for longevity. But where you are in your life and what you want out of your life is going to really dictate what these programs look like, not necessarily the structure or the goal of the program, because the goal is always going to be the same. Develop our athletic qualities to a decent extent in a way that is safe and sustainable, and ideally see progress. Obviously, as you get much older, it's going to be too slow to the decline. So bit ropey there, how you'd want to describe it, how you want to visualize it, but basically just think you're trying to train to be as athletic as you can be at your given age, or as athletic as you need to be at your given age is maybe a better way to describe it. But I thought the easiest way to really break this down is let's jump into a plan. There is a GPP plan, one for a younger person, and then rewrite it for an older person so we can see how these things overlap, but functionally it's the exact same thing. If you want to train for longevity, whether that's for living longer or living with a better quality of life for longer, a better physical capacity for longer, I think you should be doing both, that you want to be training like an athlete, basically. That's what we're going to look at. So let's have a look at these plans that I've got here, or the plan, and then we're going to write the second one together. Before we do that though, I want to talk about something. When we are training for longevity or training to be a generalist athlete, then we need to cover all our athletic qualities, as I've said. And I break these down into roughly 11 athletic qualities. We've got strength that is maximal or endurance. We've got power that is maximal or endurance. Speed, maximal or endurance. Then we have mobility and flexibility, which I tend to put together, but you could separate them if you want. However, you're going to be hard-pressed to improve your mobility without improving your flexibility, and you're going to be hard-pressed to improve your flexibility without improving your mobility. So they're kind of things I put together. Then we've got our cardio, we've got anaerobic cardio, aerobic cardio, and we have hypertrophy, which isn't like technically an athletic quality, but if you're training, you're going to build muscle, and muscle is essential for athletic performance. So I would include it in there. Obviously, it's sort of a spin-off of strength training or power training. It's kind of a spin-off of all training because it's just an overload of mechanical tension, but it's in there. And then the final one is coordination. So these are the athletic qualities that we're looking to develop. And then something you learn quite early on as a PT is that when you're training Gen Pop people, and a Gen Pop person is just anyone in the general population. So you're not an athlete, you aren't like under specific like physical demand in any element of your life that's like super like necessary to you and extreme out the ordinary. You're just a normal person. So probably like everyone's parents are probably a Gen Pop person unless they're like competing in the CrossFit Masters or something like that. I would even be Gen Pop. Obviously I'm quite a high level trainee, but like my day-to-day life is just normal. I train for fun, right? I'm a Gen Pop person. So you probably are too. And these are the movement patterns you're going to want to train if you want to maintain good function, good quality of life, and actually make sure you're hitting all the things your body needs to do. So you need some element of vertical push and a vertical pull. You need a horizontal push and a horizontal pull. You need a lower hip dominant movement. You need a lower knee dominant movement. And then you need to do stuff with your core, which is going to be compression, rigidity, flexion, extension, and rotation. And then it's worth noting, we also want to make sure we hit these certain points. We want some impact. We want to do some unilateral work. We want to do some large arm movements. We want to do some heavy movements. We want to do some fast movements. And we want to do some straight arm work, which this one is a little bit, don't necessarily need to do that, but you'll find you often do a lot of straight leg work for your lower body in this hip and knee dominant one. If you think RDL, straight leg work, leg raise, straight leg work. You don't always do it with your arms, and there's definitely some benefit to doing it with your arms, and this is something that gets forgotten a lot, but your bicep is considered like a stereotypical pulling musculature, right? If you do that. However, if you do a straight arm movement, it's suddenly a push. Same with your tricep. It is thought of as a pushing movement, but if you're doing straight arm work, it acts as a pull. It's not like super important, but it's something that I think is worth including in the program just because it's a function of the body. Now, when we think about these points we want to hit, and we think about these movement patterns, we don't need to hit all of these points on all of these movement patterns, but we want to make sure we have a relatively decent spread. So say I'm doing a bilateral pull, and that's the only vertical pull I do, then I probably want to make sure that I do at least some sort of unilateral horizontal pull. So there is some sort of unilateral horizontal pull, or unilateral pull I should say, rather, because obviously we already said horizontal pull, some unilateral pull. So we're getting something there. Same as if we were doing a lot of squatting, we probably want to make sure we do some form of unilateral hip dominant movement or unilateral knee dominant movement at some point to make sure we're mixing it up. in terms of large ROM. Again, we don't need every movement to be large ROM, but we probably want to think, okay, well, if we're doing, a lot of like box squats, then we probably want some accessory work that isn't strength work to take us through full range with the lower body. If we were doing lots of benching and it was just a barbell bench, we know we're not getting that deep range. We probably want to do something where we're going to get a bit more of a stretch here. So it's just thinking about that. And then we want some impact, we want some fast movement, some straight arm work. We're going to obviously try and spread this between the upper and lower body relatively evenly. And we're going to try and hit all of these athletic qualities. Similarly to these points we want to hit, we don't need to hit every athletic quality in every movement pattern, but we want to make sure we're getting stimulus across the whole body to all of these athletic qualities. With that in mind, let's have a look at this plan over here. So this is a 4-day athletic program. And this is actually based off of my training plan. And right now, I'm 26, I work in the fitness industry, so I can train a fair bit more than other people. And this year, I'm looking to compete in jiu-jitsu a couple of times. So I also actually should worth mention, I want to maintain a level of free running / tricking, but it's not a priority. But the point being, I'm a pretty athletic guy, I'm young, I've been training for well over 10 years now, so I've got an advanced training age, I can take a lot of volume and I can push pretty hard. And if we break down this plan, the way it works is on day 1 and day 3, I start with a weak point focus. That is just like whatever the individual needs, they will be working on in that block. And at the same time, you can be warming up. So for me, it's my ankles and wrists are generally my weak points. So I'm doing some specific ankle and wrist work in that prep. And I'll also be, doing a bit of foam rolling, maybe getting my arms moving, just basic mobility that would get me, or basic prep work. I don't want to say mobility because warm-ups don't have to be mobility. Basic prep work to get me set up for the rest of the training. This moves into, on day 1, a lower power movement, knee dominant lower strength movement, horizontal push strength movement, some compression, flexion, and then some cardio. So what we can see here is that we've ticked off cardio. Do you know what? I'm just going to put them in green. So we've done them. We've done some cardio, so I'll put that in orange because we'll have done either aerobic or anaerobic. We have done an element of mobility because you can see I've put down here originally Olympic lifting, so it's going to take us through a decent range. It's also going to be power, and we've got some compression, flexion, extension. So we can very quickly tick off on this day that we've done a bit of core work. Let me put it as orange because it's not all of it. Actually, well, we've done rigidity as well, flexion, extension, and compression. So we can put a little bit of...
1 hour later, 2 hours later.
Sorry, my brain just froze there. Worth noting, when we've got this flexion and extension, compression is a form of flexion, right? We're flexing the core together, but you can also go laterally, which is why I've marked it separately there. So just keep that in mind. We've done some of that, right? We just haven't done rotation. We've done some horizontal pushing. We haven't done any horizontal pulling, but we're starting to tick these things off, right? We've done some power, put that in green. We've done some strength, put that in green. Not necessarily endurance, not necessarily maximal strength, somewhere in the middle. And that's what you'll find is that often these things do sit somewhere in the middle, but that's fine. We're just ticking it off to show you that it's there. Next day, do some plyo warm-up. So we're going to get some more power, arguably speed, but I would call plyos power. And they're going to be higher rep here because it's a warm-up, so we can think about a bit more endurance. Then got some vertical push power. Power is already ticked off. Horizontal push power. Power is already ticked off. You could also argue that when you're doing horizontal power and stuff, you're doing speed, but for now, let's leave it here. Then we've got some, have we got mobility? Well, we've got deep knee flexion. I would argue that's mobility. And we have some rotation in there, so we can tick off that we're doing this. At this point, we're definitely doing a decent amount of volume, so we're getting hypertrophy in there. Plyos, I would say, lend themselves to an element of coordination, so we can tick that off. And then we've got, we've kind of done a lot, right? I'm going to say we've done mobility because we're going deep. We've got more cardio at the end, so we can tick this off. And then speed. Okay, I'm going to say we haven't done speed yet, but within the first 2 days, right, you can see we're tapping on all these qualities, and that's the main thing I want you guys to be paying attention to, is we're ticking off these qualities, right? And if we have a look, we've gone horizontal push, horizontal pull, this is ticked off. Not necessarily done it with all the qualities yet, but we're doing it. Vertical pulls there. We have a vertical push strength on this day as well. Boom. So you can see, we've got a hip dominant movement here. Boom. And we have a knee dominant movement, which we've done back here. So all of these are already ticked off. So you can see that the plan is ticking off these general movement patterns for a GPP human. That's what we're looking to do. The next day, we've got more weak points. We've got some lower power, but you've noted here, originally this was sprints. And I'm going to say that's speed because we probably want to keep speed in there. So I can actually rename this to lower power, speed. And really, anytime you're doing power, you could also be doing speed. It just depends how fast you're moving. So Olympic lifting, for example, is going to make you faster, but it's going to be more relative to power because you're moving a lot of load. So you're moving a lot of load quickly. And this is kind of where you differentiate power and speed. Speed is talking about moving at maximal pace. Power is about producing a large amount of force in a short period of time. So when you're sprinting, you are working your power, but you're going to get up to maximal speed. Therefore, it's kind of more speed work with an element of power. If you were thinking about developing speed for punching, well, you can do some like banded punches and stuff like that, but really that's going to develop an element of like rotational power. When you're trying to build maximal speed and you want to build speed in your punches, you're actually better off, setting a 10-second timer, going up to a punch bag and whap, whap, ba, ba. Us. As fast as you can for 10 seconds, long rest, reset. So it's about moving fast. And if you're going to move at maximal speed, you generally need to be unloaded. Or you can do things where they use overspeed training where you get a band to help you and stuff. But ignore all of that. You functionally just need to be unloaded so you can move fast. So we'll leave that note that that's sprints and that allows us to tick off this speed. Now, I'm not going to jump through all of this really quickly because I want to just come back over here. Now we've done, I'm just going to call it sprints and this day 1 and 2 here. Have we had impact? Yes, because we've done plyos. Have we done unilateral work? Well, we've got single leg hinge here. We've just said these are horizontal push strengths, horizontal pull strengths. So these could be unilateral. And when we look at the full plan, we'll see some of them are, some of them aren't. Have we done a large ROM? Well, yeah, we're doing, deep squats. We haven't necessarily spoken about what we're doing with the upper body, but if we're doing a vertical pull for a power, as we'll see in the next plan, we could be doing one from above, pulling low. So we've got large ROM there. Doing a deep squat is large ROM. So we're picking these things up. We've gone heavy and we've gone fast. And have we done any straight arm work? I haven't particularly noted it, but actually here would be a front lever in the plan. So we have. Boom. So when we're thinking about longevity, right? We're thinking about ticking all of these things off. And then this is a plan, this is the structure of a plan that's written for someone like myself who's 26, who is pretty athletic and training to be more athletic. If we have a look at what this plan actually works out, like day 1 is wrists and ankles, heavy cleans, heavy front squats, weighted dips where we're going from a 4x5, trying to build it up to a 4x10 at the same weight. Then we've got leg raises, which is our compression, and we've got neck work, which is obviously flexion and extension this way, but we also go laterally. Now, I know when we think about the neck, we don't typically think about this as the core, but when I move my neck, you can even just see it here, it moves my body because muscles from the neck go down into your back around, well, obviously this is my sternum, I can't show you my back right now, to about here in the body. So they have an impact on what your upper back's doing. What your upper back does impacts your core, right? So it's going to make a difference. We then do some cardio, and I like to have cardio in every program if I'm not pairing that training with a jiu-jitsu day. You'll notice these 2 days are pretty easy-ish comparatively. This day's pretty easy-ish comparatively as well. So day 1, day 3, day 4, I might double up. So you may not necessarily do the cardio in the session, but you'd be doing cardio. Day 2, we've got our plyo warm-up. Then we're doing high pulls, so bar high pulls, asymmetric plyo push-ups, so that's where you'd be jumping either side, and we can think that's a unilateral then. We then got front lever, DB planche raises, so that's a unilateral because you'd have one on each arm, and with straight arm work here. Zercher deadlift top set, pretty large ROM, also going to be heavy, doing some split stance, RDL down sets, 2 to 3 sets, so it's not getting crazy wacky in terms of volume here, right, but we are pushing it. We then got GHD halos, rotation, single arm shoulder press, overhead single arm stuff, low lunge bounces, I'll put a video in because it's just easier than explaining it, and a single arm horizontal row, using a machine on the shoulder press as well. So don't think we've got to shy away from machines just because we're training like an athlete, guys. It just depends if it makes sense to use it at the time. Day 3, wrists and ankles, and we go into sprints. So that's a little bit conditioning, speed, power work, power clean plus power jerk, weighted pull-ups, Hatfield squat, high volume, so this isn't going to be crazy heavy. In fact, on this, what I quite like to do is elevate my heels, get real deep knee flexion on this so we can think large range again. Single arm push-ups paired with hamstring tantrum, so that's speed for the lower body on the hamstring tantrum. Single arm push-ups, unilateral horizontal pushing strength, and of course, more cardio. And then on day 4, we've got plyos, ring muscle up. Ring muscle up is about the biggest range strength push you can get because you're going from a pull all the way to a push in the vertical plane. So we are doing large ROM, got some planche work, straight arm strength. Wall bridge walks, so my back is pretty immobile, so what I like to do is actually get on a wall when I do bridges and just walk down it, walk back up. It can be a great way to build into it. Some Jefferson curls as well, so we're taking the spine in the opposite direction. Then I'll do some rotating bridge walks, where you just stretch around and you're going to walk around like that. Maybe I'll just put a video up because I don't know if that explanation means anything. And then we got some Cossack squats, deep ROM. So these I'm keeping particularly deep. Some tricep extensions, some rear delt flies, some bicep curl, some cardio. So point being, this program written for someone who is pretty athletic, who's training to be an athlete, is covering all of these points as if we were GPP, right? And we've spoken about that if we're training for GPP, we're training for longevity and health. But if you were, say, a 70-year-old, this is going to look pretty different, right? So let me pull this out quick. And now what I want to imagine is rather than me, we're going to be a 70-year-old who just wants to be independent and have fun with their grandkids. That's it. And the thing I'm going to add to that is they only want to train 3 times a week. So we don't need to be going wacky mode if that's all we want. Because as I said, like what you're going to be doing depends on where you are in life and what you want out of life, the level of athleticism and physical capacity you need. But that doesn't mean we don't need to be training like an athlete. And I was actually chatting to Chloe, who some of you will have seen, Coach Chloe Ralph, who some of you will have seen on the DB School, about this. And one of the things that I thought was a really nice line from them is that the degree of demand changes, but the demands are the same, right? The thing you need to be doing is still training like a generalist athlete. It's just how savage you need to be going changes pretty significantly depending on where you are in life. So let's be this 70-year-old, right? Hypothetically, they only want to train 3 times a week, but we know we need to be hitting all of this. So let's just pull this all together. So we probably want a weak point focus, right? We probably want a little bit of plyos or like the equivalent of plyos. We probably want some power, speed, some power. I think the easiest day to remove is going to be here, right? And let's figure out why. Well, we've got rotation, we've got flexion, compression, extension. All of that sort of thing is in here. When we do that rotating bridge, we're getting a bit more of that lateral flexion than we might. So I'm going to try and remove this day. Do we have plyos in the plan? Yeah. Do we have upper power and upper strength? Yeah. So I'm just going to cut that out. Do we have horizontal push strength? Horizontal pull strength here. We've got horizontal push strength here. So we can cut that out. Have we got flexion and extension? Yeah, we've got some compression here. We've got flexion and extension. We don't particularly have any like real big extension though if we haven't got the bridges on that day. So what I'm going to do is just add a cell in here. Actually, do you know what? I'll just take this here. And I'm going to note sagittal plane. And I'm going to note that this is frontal plane. Side to side, AKA, is all we're talking about there. We're moving side to side. And then we'll stick some cardio on the back here. Cool, so that's gone. We'll tick that off. We've got rotation in there. We're gonna have shoulder stability because we're gonna do overhead work. We've got knee dominant lower movements, full range. We haven't got any direct arm work in there, but you don't necessarily need direct arm work. We're gonna leave them with it though. So let's just drop this cardio here. And let's just say they get a nice arm set here, little arm pumpy set. Having a look at this, this is still maybe a little bit dense on this day 3, if they want to train 3 days and that's it. So what I'm going to do is actually superset this here and say arms here. And we'll make that a superset. Cool. So now, what we've created, just off the back of what my plan actually looked like, we've got rid of day 4, because remember, if we want to be healthy, we just need to mark off all of this. And we did that within the first 2 days and a teeny bit here. So when we're doing this plan, we can just cut it down to 3 days. We've still ticked all of this off. Now remember, this person's 70 though. So what we're going to do is just adapt this a little bit differently. So what are their weak points going to be? Chances are they're just getting a little bit stiff. So we might do some sort of like mobility flow. Warm up. Now that might not be crazy. That might just be what we're going to do is work around a box. Maybe we're going to go from the floor, try and get up, try and sit on the box, try and get over the box, to sit down on the other side. Maybe it's that we're going to have a little step. And again, it depends on their capability. Because I mean, you look at the CrossFit Games Masters, the 70-year-olds doing crazy stuff. If you look at, you know, my granddad when he was 70, he was learning to juggle. I think he could still unicycle at the time, so he can do stuff. But it's just going to depend on who you are. So we're going to say some mobility, flowy, warm-up thing. The main thing is we just want to get them moving in novel positions, because that's one of the things you lose. Gym work is great for developing athletic qualities, but it doesn't teach you to apply it. So this is just about getting them moving and getting them warmed up and getting them doing something. Now, we want some lower power. Chances are, in your 70s, you're probably not going to be Olympic lifting. You can, but like you're probably not going to want to, especially if you didn't learn it before or you're just a bit stiff. But we can take stuff from it. So what we might do instead is just a trap bar high pull. So very similar to a clean pull, but we're just going to do it with a trap bar. It's a bit easier. We might just have it as an empty bar, and they're just going to come up from the floor fast, try and get up on their toes. A little bit of a shrug. That's it. Knee dominant lower strength. Well, we probably want them to squat. And actually, do you know what? I'm just going to make a little tweak here. Let's put it in a B stance. Because coordination and that like movement range is very important at this age. So you'll see as well, I'm focused on cleans and strength and, you know, pushing that max stuff. You'll see a lot of bilateral work here, but you don't necessarily have to do that. Bilateral work is not a demand of training. You don't need to be doing heavy squats or things like that. You can be doing what makes sense. However, I am going to have them squat here, and I'm going to have them doing a Zercher squat. If we can get full range, great. It may be to a box. Depends on what they are. And again, it doesn't have to be heavy. This might be 30 kilos, but a little bit of added weight. If they can get down to a box and back up, they're never getting stuck on the toilet. And, you know, they're probably going to be able to have fun with their grandkids. Horizontal push strength. Now, obviously, I had weighted dips. If they can do a dip, great. Maybe they can't. So maybe here, we've just got push-ups. It might be incline push-ups. It might be push-ups from the floor. But it's one of those skills where we want people to be able to get up and off the ground if they get down. And if they want to play with their grandkids, then they're probably going to want to go to the park. They're probably going to want to play with them on the floor. They're going to have to get up and down. Now, let's move on here. Compression. Okay, let's just get them doing sit-ups. You know, sit-ups or maybe, I don't know, crunches. Anything, like it could just be a normal exercise as well. You don't have to get crazy with these compressions. You just need your cores to be doing the function. Flexion, side to side. Maybe let's just do a dumbbell side bend. And of course, we could do neck work with them. We don't necessarily need to. Their neck might be strong enough. This is just what we're doing for now. They might just do a dumbbell side bend, and your neck is going to get stronger from doing other things in your training. Then we've got extension in the sagittal plane, so forward and back. So here, I might actually just do a cobra stretch. And then we're getting some mobility, we're getting some range, and you can do those actively, right? You might push up and down into it. It doesn't necessarily have to just be flexibility. We can get them doing it through range, building a bit of more like active range mobility, whatever. And then let's just do some arm work, biceps, triceps. Do this as a big superset, tricep thing. And you know, you need strong arms. If you're gonna play with your kids, you wanna pick them up. If you wanna be able to go up the monkey bars with them, who knows? You can still do that in your 70s, you just need to be strong enough. And then some cardio. We might get them doing assault bike sprints. So they're working some higher intensity stuff. They're working that anaerobic output, which is going to help them with some power and speed. But we might do them sort of like, you know, 15 seconds maybe, rather than 10. It might take them a bit longer to get up to speed, maybe even 20. Doesn't really matter though, because we're just going to scale it to them. You guys know I love RPE, right? So if we're training someone who is a bit older and we give them something that's RPE 9, still fine. It's just going to be slower than if you gave me the RPE 9 at 26, you know. It all scales. You can do all the RPE still. And you would need to. So obviously if you're doing power, you're going to need to pull it fast. That's fine. It's fast is just relative to that age. Plyo warm-up. Now, we may not be jumping around as aggressively as, say, a younger person if we're training someone in their 70s. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it. An example we could do is like a banded pogo hop, which is going to reduce some of the impact, and they might be able to do that. If they couldn't do that, it might be as simple as stepping down off of a plate. And the impact from stepping is still an element of like, you know, it's not a plyometric at that point, but it's impact, and the point we're looking for is impact. We do ideally want them to get a little bit of plyometric action in jumping, but it could be as simple as going on a jog. It's plyometric at that point. So we could do like a plate drop. We could just do 10-min jogging uphill. And the uphill will reduce the impact a little bit, but we're still able to put a little bit of force in. And of course, like I say, if you go look at the CrossFit Games where people are in their 70s and absolutely demolishing it, you don't have to be this conservative. You can do more. This is just what we're showing you to show you that longevity, when you're in your 70s, you want to be independent, have fun with your grandkids. We're just looking to maintain physical capacity for life and to live longer. It can just be an athletic training plan. You just pick slightly different things. Vertical pull power. They're probably not going to do a high pull, but they could do a med pull slam. They probably aren't going to do, you know, really aggressive plyo push-ups, but they might do a med pull throw. Suddenly we're getting this power in, right? Horizontal pull strength. What could we do? Let's do chin up. We've said they can do push-ups. Maybe they can do chin up. It might have to be banded though. That's okay. No problem there. Horizontal push on, well, we've done push-ups. Okay, what could we do? Maybe on this day now, we do some pec fly. Now we're getting some straight arm strength in here. Heavy bilateral hinge. We've already had them do a squat, but we haven't had them do a heavy hinge. So this, I'm just going to say they do a conventional deadlift. Being able to pick stuff up off the ground is very useful if you want to play with your grandkids, right? Because they're little, they're going to be low. And then we do some single leg down sets. Let's say split stance, dumbbell, RDL. Just mix it up a little bit. We might even be able to put an element of rotation in that if you wanted to, coming across the body with it. I like to do that in my RDLs. They might want to do that. Rotation, cool. Let's just do a cable twist. Horizontal cable twist, this easy. Vertical push strength, let's do some dumbbell overhead press. Maybe we do that standing. Maybe we do it kneeling. Maybe we fucking do it blindfolded. I don't know. It doesn't matter because at this point, you can see we're just filling in exercises that are appropriate for the person. It really does become that simple. Deep knee flexion. Now, deep would be relative to this person. We're going to assume that they're fit enough to do like a lunge, an ATG split squat, let's say. Oh, wow, I'm typing badly. Maybe just normal lunges. Doesn't matter, we're just getting them through range and then horizontal pull strength. Let's just say they're going to do a cable row. Super simple. And then we've got some cardio. Obviously, we chucked in jogging up here. We may have chucked in jogging up here. And actually, it should say plyo warm-up. When I'd be doing the plyos, I'd be doing multiple different things. So we might actually get them to do all three of those things in their warm-up. Completely possible. And then cardio here, maybe let's look at doing a row for a little bit longer. 5 rounds, 2 minutes on, 1 minute off. Just something that's a little bit less sprinty, right? A little bit more even. Day 3, we'll go for a mobility flow warm-up. We would aim to do something different to what we've done in day 1. So challenging some different movement patterns, some different coordinational skills. Like I say, it's about integrating what we're doing. So you might, I don't know, you might do a jump into a squat, into a... It depends on the person. I think we've got to the point that it's contextual. I'm not just going to keep saying it's dependent on the person. So we'll just do some sort of warm-up here. Now, lower power / speed. So we've obviously done the high pull, which is going to be our power. Now, we don't know if this person could be sprinting, but I like to think they could sprint. You'd see people who are older sprinting. We're going to just say this person can. Again, maybe we'll do it uphill and we'll say hill sprint. Are you going to truly be at absolutely maximal speed? Maybe not, but they'll be fine. They'll still get faster. So maybe we say 20 seconds, going uphill really hard. We take maybe a 2 to 3 minute rest and we'd repeat it 4 times. Perhaps. If this person couldn't do that and they weren't able to sprint, then we could even just think about walking really hard and fast. Or maybe jogging is the speed work, because it comes back to the fact that this is all relative, right? Someone might be able to sprint, they might be able to run, but that is their sprint. It's just relative. We're just going to go hard and fast. On a hill maybe. We could even do it flat. You know, there's no reason that we can do it flat. The point I want you to understand though, is that we're just picking exercises that are appropriate for the person such that they can hit all their athletic qualities, all their movement patterns, and tick off all of these things. Then, lower power. Well, maybe we've already done lower power and upper power, but I will say power is very important as you get older. It's one of the things that leaves, it's one of the things that leads to falls and things like that. So maybe let's just do a dynamic lateral lunge. We might not be looking to go really deep, we're just getting them to step up to the side, push back up. Step up to the side, push back up. Maybe we'd hold that with a dumbbell or something, you don't know. Upper power, maybe we could do a split stance, dumbbell push press. And now we're integrating, splitting the lower body, using the legs, using the upper body, driving rigidity through our core to transfer force, vertical pull strength. Well, we've already done a chin up, so maybe we could do a single arm dead hang. Really work that grip strength. Obviously, we all know grip strength is associated with a longer life. It's not the grip that's making you live longer, but we know that training that improves your grip is going to be beneficial to longevity. So why not do some grip training, right? And this is also going to be great for their shoulders, some decompression, and you know, your shoulders get jammy as you get older, man. The shoulder's a shit joint, so good for you. Now, we've got some lower knee extension volume. I was doing Hatfield squat for this, but they've already squatted. Again, we don't necessarily need to do that. And I think when you get older, you're going to benefit from doing kind of more different things, really. So what I'm going to say we do here is, what do I want to do here? What do I want to do here?
Whoa, whoa. Here I come. Oh, here I come. Oh.
I'm going to say we do some pistol squats. But we might be doing these to a box. They might just be negatives to a box. That's all okay. It just needs to be what's appropriate for them. So maybe this person can actually go down to a box and back up pretty low. Maybe they just do negatives. Maybe they can do the pistol squat. It's hard to know. The thing is that I keep coming back to though, and I keep mentioning it, is when we're thinking longevity, especially once you're getting older, you're looking to stay dynamic, stay capable in life. We want a wide range of movement exposure. That's why I'd like this sort of mobility flow warm-up where you're just playing in space. That's why I'd want to do, maybe a split stance push press versus like just really driving strength with a barbell press. We obviously want them to get stronger, but the reality is when you're in your 70s, by the time you're 80, you are probably going to be weaker unless you never trained up until that point. So we're trying to slow that decline. However, this person wants to be independent and have fun with their grandkids. So movement options is everything here. Grip strength, the ability to go down on one leg, you might need to, depends what's happening with the kid and what you're doing, right? So we want to give them these options. Now we've got some horizontal push strength here. We've done a pec fly. We've done a lot. I'm going to say, why not just give them another push up here? But this time we'll make it asymmetric. So perhaps we'd have them on one side here. It can be this simple. We can just mix it up. Knee flexion volume, we could give them hamstring tantrum. We could also just give them a leg curl. And then this day is actually a little bit shorter than the rest, so maybe we just do some steady state here. That could be on a bike, on an elliptical, on a rower, whatever they like. And that is really how simple longevity training can be. So the point we're making right here, guys, is that if you're training for longevity, you're training to be an athlete. It's the same thing. We can see that basically taking my program, and this is literally the program I'm running right now, we can then cut some bits out to make it a bit more appropriate for the person we're writing for, and we can pick exercises that actually then suit that person. And because we're developing all of our athletic qualities, we're working the Gen Pop movement patterns, and we're hitting these points we need for general health, we're training for longevity, and this is going to do a great job of helping this 70-year-old be independent and have fun with their grandkids. Let's just check it out really quick. If we're doing a mobility flow warm-up, then, well, yeah, we've got that. I'm just going to close them off this time so we know they're gone. We're doing trap bar high pull. Okay, that's some power. We're doing assault bike sprints. We're doing some row. We're probably going to do some power endurance as well. We might be doing this at higher rep. We don't necessarily have to be always driving maximal power, because if you're training power, you're going to maintain it, even if your endurance is improving, whatever. We've got it. We've got some strength work in there. We're doing everything from RDLs, which might be at a higher rep, to normal deadlifts. We're going to do maximal and endurance. We've got push-ups. We've got that horizontal strength. We're also going to be doing these at a higher rep, probably. We've got some cable row. We've got some deep lunges. We're doing hypertrophy. We're hitting cardio 3 days a week. Done. We've got them doing some jogging. We've got them doing some plyos. We've got them doing some sprints. We're getting speed and speed endurance. Dynamic lateral lunges. We've got coordination because we're giving them these mobility flows. We're giving them some, split stance push press. Have we done a vertical push and pull? Got the chin up here and we've got a push press? Yes. Have we done horizontal push up and we've got a cable row? Yes. We've done hip dominant movement? Yep. Have we done a knee dominant movement? Yep. Have we done core compression? Yeah, we've done sit-ups. Have we done a side bend? Yeah, we've done lateral flexion extension. Have we done rigidity? Yes. Have we done rotation? We've got a cable twist. Yes. Now, have we got impact? Well, we've got some jogging. Yeah. Have we done unilateral work? Yeah. Have we done stuff over a large run? Relatively large run, yeah, we might be getting these squats all the way to the floor, maybe to a box. Again, it all comes back to being relative. Are we taking the person through large ROM? Do these exercises give us the capacity to do that? Yes. Are we going heavy? Yeah. Are we going fast? Yeah. Have we done some straight arm work? We've done a single arm dead hang. We've done a pec fly. Maybe we haven't done any rear delt fly or anything, but it's not the end of the world. We've done it all. So we've ticked off all these things. It's the exact same things that this athletic training plan does. It's the exact same thing I'd want to give a 70-year-old who just wants to train with their grandkids. Because longevity training is athletic training. What changes in the programs is the demand you place on yourself. How intense are you going? How much volume? What is the exercise selection? But the things you need for longevity in your 70s are identical to the things you need when you train as an athlete at 25, 26. If you're someone that cares about longevity, you're someone who wants to get the most out of your life, have the best physical quality, of life for as long as possible and live for as long as possible, you need to be training like a generalist athlete. If you're on the younger side, you can be a bit more aggressive with your programming, maybe a bit more wacky with it. As you get older, as you have less time available, you're going to adapt that to what is right for you. But what we need to be clear on is that athletic training is longevity training. It's not just fanning around with mobility or light weights. You need to get in there and you need to train properly. I hope you enjoyed that one, guys. Hopefully it gave you a bit of an insight into what longevity training is. I know it's a bit of a waffle sometimes going through programs, but I think that is the best way you can possibly see what we're thinking about as coaches when we're designing these things. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you like what we do here at Different Breed and you want to see more of me yapping away about fitness. That is it for today. I will catch you in the next one.